I was just thinking actually before we got on here, we have a lot to talk about this week with all of there's been a lot of changes. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a little more involved on Twitter. Have you been seeing like everything that's happened with the gatings with different brands? Not that it's really relevant to us, but
Oh yeah, with you talking about like the bundles and stuff.
well, yeah, the bundles I feel like are relevant, but just everything like Lego, just like everything is. I mean, did you even? I don't know if you saw it. We're like, it says not available. Did you see that?
For what?
For like big brands like Lego and I think like Mattel, a couple other ones.
Really? Like if you talking about if you punch it into catalog?
Yeah,
Wow. So hard gating on those big brands.
yeah. I mean, I don't know that it. I feel like it happens. How many times does this happen where it's like, and then 3 weeks later it's cleared up?
Yeah.
So you never know. But either way, it's just like there's
Yeah, I
no.
mean it's always something with Amazon, it's I mean, what about the bundles though? Like the generic bundles?
Yeah, it's just like you talk about playing by the rules with stuff. Like how many accounts have do we have that have competitors that are doing this to try, you're creating this form of like artificial exclusivity almost by doing stuff like that. And it just, we preach it all the time. It's like it catches up to you eventually.
Yep.
So,
This happens. It seems like things like this happen every year with Amazon, and the road always leads back to playing by the rules.
yeah.
It's like people. This is why there's so many fly by night sellers. This is why people are selling on Amazon and then they're out of Amazon and then they're it's because the life cycle for a lot of new sellers is just so short lived because people will just do anything they can to make a quick buck at the end of the day. Um, Whereas like the serious sellers that are in this and stick out for it in the long term and read Amazon TOS and have an understanding of what is and what is not allowed on the platform, those are the sellers that are going to outlive everybody.
I always say whenever something happens like this, where it's like a rule change or something that is applicable to like, brands themselves, because this is like you kind of trace it back to like, oh, you're working with a brand and other people are doing this with the brand. Like I somehow always try to find a way to work in whatever Amazon is doing into a pitch. Like I sent that bundle post to like that forum post to two brands today, and I was like, hey, this is happening and these are the sellers that are doing it, and we're looking to play by the rules type deal, and they're getting shut down, and Amazon is just pushing them out type of deal.
Yeah, and it's a way of it's like a way of positioning us as basically we're going to put money back in their pocket because without those listings they don't have an avenue of revenue coming in you know um, but a lot of these brands, it's quite shocking because a lot of these brands, we talk to, Amazon only makes up an incremental component of their business. So it's like some of them are just not that motivated. Like, it's like we could pitch some brands all day long and it just comes down to it. They're not motivated because Amazon is a small percentage of their business.
I mean, it's like that with a lot of just commerce in general. I mean, you when we went to, I forget what event we were at, but that was one of the things that stuck with me is like the amount of the small percentage of Amazon versus like the total commerce market. It's crazy. It's like you see it and I see it and most people see it as this giant conglomerate, which in the e-commerce world it is. It's like 20 something percent. But even that being said, 20%, like I feel like if you ask people on the street how much Amazon made up of total like sales and stuff, they would probably say like us, 50, 60% or something. It's not. I mean, the retail market is so massive, like it's not even on the radar for a lot of businesses. And but unfortunately is one of those things for them that just is going to exist regardless of whether they want to or not. It's like, you can't stop it. It's like the saying, like, if you can't beat them, join them, right? Like, they need to have their presence taken care of. Because I mean, your products are going to find their way on Amazon one way or another.
Exactly. Yeah. And for anybody just joining, we go live every single Wednesday. We answer all your questions. If you guys have questions, drop them here in the comments section. Always happy to answer anything Amazon related. We might dive into some sourcing tonight through Smart Scout. Generally, what we'll do is we'll source a brand. We'll identify why that's a prospective brand of interest and how we would pitch them based on how the listings look. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, and you enjoy the lives and the content and the valuable information, it does help out the videos when you hit the like button. So, if you guys have any questions at all as we're talking through some things here, just drop them right in, and we will answer the questions as they come in. First question here is, do we use Inventory Lab or Seller Board? So we are still with Inventory Lab, but Seller Board is a very good software. And I would actually recommend Seller Board for most beginner sellers from an accounting standpoint.
There's different softwares too. Like they're different uses. They're not like a one-to-one comparable, I don't think.
Right. And the reason for that is Seller Board's a little bit more comprehensive from an accounting standpoint, but because we work with an external bookkeeping firm, all we are doing with Inventory Lab is utilizing it for an inventory valuation and sending shipments through in some cases. So primary purpose of Inventory Lab for us is to value our inventory so that we can relay it to the bookkeepers. But yeah, if you're a newer seller, or, if you're doing, if an open space software is still meeting your accounting needs, then I would recommend Seller Board for that.
Yeah, and 2D barcodes with Inventory Lab as well. It's another big benefit. I mean, Seller Board is not a shipment creation software, so.
Right. Yeah. What's up, Noah? How you doing, man? Jumping in the chat here. If you guys have any questions, drop them in. We're answering them as they come in. But God, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think at a certain point, like, what do you think that threshold is to go to an outside firm or something like that for bookkeeping, or like in terms of monthly profit, let's say? Like, what would?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say monthly profit. It's kind of tough to say because it's case by case. I think that definitely once you're in the 7-figure range of doing,
Sales-wise,
over $1 million, I would say it might be worth a hard look at something like that. It also depends on how many orders you're pumping out. So the software that we're using for accounting is A2X, links with QuickBooks, and we have an external bookkeeping firm that manages and codes every single transaction that comes through Amazon, and codes all the transactions and generates comprehensive financial reporting. When is the right time for that? Well, we did it a little bit late. But
to be fair, I remember saying, I was like, we should look into A2X like forever ago, and you're like,
yeah. But it's like you're caught up with the growth of the company, and it's like sometimes you really need to take a step back and look at your business on a holistic level,
Right.
and really make sure everything is in tune. Because if you don't have your books in check, I mean, how many times have I said this? Like, if you don't have your books in check, you're nothing. And when we were using before was just, an Inventory Lab or like a Seller Board, which is okay, but it gets to a point where it's not manageable. Through that, you don't have cash flow reporting or anything like that. So,
A2X comes from payouts. So like A2X starts at the disbursement level. So that's what the key is, right? Because you're working backwards essentially from your disbursement, and it matches everything up. So that, obviously there's a lot more accuracy related to that. And QuickBooks is just, It's the industry standard, I guess, for accounting.
Yeah, know those numbers, man. It's so important. Like, it's just not only important for your business, it's just important for your own mental health. Like, if you don't know your numbers, you're just, can be bleeding red and you don't even know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's like, it's not, I think people don't do it because it's not fun, right? Like at the beginning, it's like how, I'll say like, and we're both like this actually, where it's like, if it's something out of your norm, like my tail light has been out on my car for 2 months. And
yeah, I noticed that today.
like I could easily just like, it'd take me, I ordered the bulb off Amazon, it would take me 10 minutes to replace it, right? Whatever. It just hasn't happened. And it's because it's something that's not in like my daily. And I like, that sounds stupid to some people, but I know you're like that too, where it's like the amount of like mental energy investment that it takes to do something that's not in your norm versus you could work for 12 hours on the business. And like, I feel like the accounting aspect is kind of something like that, where it like causes people to deviate enough from the norm of like, okay, now I got to focus on this whole other thing, that people just don't do it because it's not fun and glamorous or normal to their operations, but it's important.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's the most important thing in the business. I actually love it. I enjoy it. I studied accounting in college, and the
Yeah.
fact that we're able to look at accounting, and business and financial reports, I was going to go into a career where I had to look at other businesses' financial reports, and now, I get to look at my own business's financial reports. So it's,
Yeah.
it's cool to see that parallel, but at the same time, like you said, completely agree. It's not 100% on the scope at all times. So it's like, making that mental shift for a lot of people, I think, because a lot of people get into this business, have no business background or accounting background. Some do, many do, but a lot of people don't. So I think, really making that a priority and educating yourself with a professional who understands accounting and bookkeeping is really going to be important, as you grow.
I mean, we both do have that business education background. I think both of us still don't like that stuff. Like, not that we don't like it, but it wasn't priority early on because it was like, head down, just work.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, if we'll figure out if we're making money after.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, well, I'm saying like at the beginning when you have that survival element of it, where you're like, when you're trying to survive, because we've talked about that before, where it's like survival, growth, like legacy, right? And when you're trying to survive, I really don't think you're looking at your P&L. When
No.
you try to survive,
Yeah, I mean, in that phase, you're not,
Yeah, that's what I mean. Only when you can take a step back and like become a little more comfortable with where you're at, I think is that more of a priority. That's what I mean. It's like, we'll figure out if we're making money after. I think that's how it goes kind of in the beginning.
Yeah.
Improving the concept, like you say all the time.
Yeah. Next question here is, can you track advertising from Inventory Lab? Inventory Lab should pull advertising from Seller Central, I believe.
I think it does. You probably check on that one.
It does. It does. That'll pull up on your P&L inventory advertising.
Their P&L is actually really comprehensive for what it is. Like you said, like open source software type deal.
Yeah.
Like it's good enough to bring to an accountant or a bookkeeper. So.
Yeah. So, and as people are joining in here, if you have any questions, drop them here in the chat. We're always happy to answer them. We could dive into some sourcing for a little bit here.
Why don't we actually, before we do that, reiterate what we just did about 2 hours ago?
Yeah. That was a pain in the ass. We were, luckily the freight company was right around the corner from our warehouse, but we took like 3 trips to get 5 pallets that attempted delivery this morning, but nobody was there. So we had to go over to the warehouse and
Yeah.
friggin'
Put them one pallet by pallet into the back of my pickup and drive that. It was literally, I was so close that it wasn't an issue, but it was just like a stupid experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's crazy the amount of time that we're spending in that warehouse these days just with Q4 is
Yeah.
it's insane. It's literally been there every day of the week, 5 days a week, just, and we're full staffed and everything. And it's just like there's so much product, but it'll be like this for the next month. And then, December will hopefully be smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a change of pace though from the rest of the year, so can't
Right.
complain.
Yeah. Sitting in front of a screen for 15
Yeah,
hours.
I get like, I don't know. I need like brace. I feel like you always impress me with that, where I feel like you just can sit there and just like, I can do it when I'm on the phone and I'm making calls and stuff, but man, if I'm just doing like computer work, I get to a certain point where I feel like my brain is melting and I have to like, that's just like how I feel like I have to go out and like get a coffee or something, because it just mentally for me like sets me up for the rest of the day. It's like that equivalent. Like I just can't, I don't know. I get burnt after a while. I feel like you're just like a machine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Unless you're
just,
just not working, and I just don't know.
yeah, I'm just not doing anything. I'm
It's on
staring at
Netflix.
the black screen. We got another question here. How many VAs do you have? I don't know, probably like 4 or 5,
Yeah.
maybe, if that, something like that.
Yeah, it varies. Like, VAs, you have to get good ones, and they have to, first of all, you have to train them, or you're not going to ever have a good VA. But, sometimes VAs will just drop off, but it all depends on the tasks that we have. And generally, it's in the 4 to 5 range. Yeah. Also depends how, like, I said that, but I'm just going to reiterate it. Like, training a virtual assistant is imperative, like to the point where if you don't do that, I have no sympathy for your VA not doing the stuff right because you didn't train them appropriately. It's like setting SOPs and documents and Loom videos and like everything you could possibly um, everything you could possibly do to train that VA based on how you want things done is huge. And it also, developing connections with them as well is, I think, really important on a more of a personal level. I think you have to treat a VA exactly how you would treat, a person that is working for you in person, rather than just like someone on the other side of the world, if they're, Philippines or wherever they are.
Yeah. So I'm in Smart Scout here. And when we source in Smart Scout, we're going for those small to medium sized brands, monthly revenue. We're looking to cap at about 100,000. This being said, a lot of times, I mean, this is more for the smaller brands. I would say 100,000 monthly revenue, but we're looking, 250,000, max monthly revenue. That'll hit your small to medium sized brands. But we'll play with the criteria a little bit. So we're setting some very basic filter criteria here. And then from here, we will just, niche down in through Smart Scout and take a look at the categories, take a look at the number of sellers, and some of the different metrics that Smart Scout provides to us here. And then from there, we're just going to open up these products in a new tab, whatever catches the eye. We're looking for, something that might be a little bit more obscure, something you haven't heard of every single day. So it's outside that scope of the big brands. And then from there, we'll just identify as to why that brand is of interest. So as I'm doing this here, I'll just, let me know if you find anything.
I was just looking at that. What is the it was a robot or something? I feel like this is also kind of weirdly enough that, people ask us a lot of times, like, what brands or what categories you're staying away from. And from my experience, anything relating to like the bicycle industry is very niche, industry specific, store, brick and mortar. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure why, but
Yeah. Yeah, there's some different industries that are like that, that really want, like the industry specificity, the,
yeah.
able to service things like that.
And if you kind of get past that initial like barrier to entry with industries like that, I feel like there's even more opportunity because you can be like, hey, yes, 100% we want to support the brick and mortars. That's really important to you, but at the same time, we're supporting brick and mortars by doing X, Y, and Z on Amazon and having representation there. Because I always use the term like, you talk industry specificity, you also have Amazon specificity, right? So like niching yourself into that for that brand, I think it can be huge. I'm also surprised that I said that word correctly twice because I can never say specificity. Is that even how you say it?
Yeah,
Specific.
you got
Yeah,
it.
I never like I'm actually impressed that I didn't fumble that twice in a row.
Yeah. So I got a few brands up here, and it just never amazes me, or never ceases to amaze me. Smart Scout, it's just like one page, and I get like, if I sat here for, and we don't do any of the sourcing anymore. We have VAs doing that. But like, if I could sit here for literally 15 minutes and find probably 20 brands that like, I'm like, yeah, this is good. Yeah, this is good. So like, by going into Smart Scout and setting just a very basic filter parameter like this, like, there's many tools or many different components and aspects to the Smart Scout tool, but just doing something as simple as this, you would be surprised at how many brands you can actually find just right here on the first page. And we haven't even gone through 1,000 or 4,000 pages, or 4,000 items. And really all we're going to do from here is we're going to open these up into new tabs, take a look at them. This is actually a brand that I believe we touched on it in a previous week. That's why it caught my attention.
Yep, yep.
And from here, we are going to actually, after we identify, hey, this is a brand of interest, we're going to look at the other sellers that are selling the product, and then we're going to look at their stores and identify as to if and why those stores are potentially of interest to then source. So it's just this continuous rabbit hole that never ends. And the sooner you realize that, the more profitable your wholesale business is going to be, and the faster you're going to grow. It's like, we've even talked about this, each other, is that, spending us as owners of the business more time on the sourcing process may drive growth at a better rate because, you're
Yeah.
sourcing much higher quality leads.
Right. And we always preach that about like, if you follow us on Twitter, if you don't, you should be because we're tweeting constantly. But we're always preaching like, 50, 100, 150 calls a week. Right. But there's certain like elements of it where it becomes more important down the line to actually focus on the quality rather than the quantity. Once you get to a certain point where you start sourcing your own brands, in your inventory.
What does that mean? Like, for somebody watching, doesn't know what
Yeah,
that
yeah. So we're talking about initial outreach, right? Reaching out to brands, storefront stalking, Smart Scout, stuff like that. But there becomes a point at which, let's say you're already stocking the inventory from a specific brand. Well, maybe revisiting that brand and not becoming just a seller, but starting to pitch them and starting to move that relationship forward in a path that ideally leads to some sort of selective agreement or some sort of exclusivity. So you can actually be sourcing more from your own products, which, something it shouldn't be overlooked as you grow. And when you do that, you have less time to reach out to new brands. I mean, our follow-up lists are so big that, I mean, the new sourcing and the new brands that we're reaching out to has become less over the years. But initially, like, it's important to do that. But, you talk about, and this leads back into why you say like why it might be a bigger driver of revenue if we were doing some of the sourcing, is because we're looking 6 months and a year down the line as far as like what we see the potential. And it's hard to get a VA to do that when we're the ones that are making the calls, we're doing the outreach, we're building the relationship. So that's kind of how it all just ties in, you know?
Yeah. And just getting higher caliber accounts off the rip. Like instead of, I think the focus, like you said in the beginning, you know, when you don't have as much wholesale accounts or you don't have as many brand direct accounts, the focus should definitely be 100 to 150 calls per week. You know, do the sourcing, you know, get good at it, and then outsource it, because it's not going to be worth your time in the beginning because you're trying to outreach in the 100 to 150 a week volume. But once you did that, you know, and you have, you know, a good amount of inventory, you know, you're doing, you know, multiple 7 figures a year in sales, it may be time to rein that sourcing process back in a bit and start to target higher caliber accounts, ones that you can, you know, close to exclusivity, 6-figure a year, you know, potential profit accounts and things like that. So, you know, that's really how kind of over time we've evolved, you know, in our business with
Yeah.
source.
I really like swinging for the fences every once in a while. Well, actually, I shouldn't say every once in a while. I actually do, I feel like I do it a lot. Like I will kind of, I don't know. There just becomes like an element of it where we talk about that sixth sense, where you just go into it knowing that like base hits are important. You know, we preach that all the time, contacting, getting the account, getting the product in inventory, making profit. But sometimes like I just like seeing something and just shooting my shot with it essentially. You know, kind of right off the rip. If that sixth sense is telling me and that intuition is telling me it's a brand that we should be going for. This is a big brand. Well, I shouldn't say they're big. They're an old, very old brand, but wow, what's going on there?
A lot going on. Yeah. So we have a few products here we could just take a look at real quick, you know, for comparison purposes. And again, we do no homework before these lives. It's like we're just jumping in onto Smart Scout just to show you, you know, the raw footage of you know, what we're doing in sourcing. And you know, it's like we look at a brand like this, and you know, categories are pretty much irrelevant to us because we sell in all different categories. So it's like we'll look at a brand like this, you know, we'll compare it to something like this, right? And I'm sure we're both seeing sort of the same thing. So this is a grocery product, which is nice. We like grocery, low return rate. So I look at this, and you know, the first thing that's jumping out at me is probably the same thing that's jumping out at you, which is
it? Because I'm looking at the fact that there's variations that I don't really like.
Maybe. I mean, product sells.
No, I like this listing. I definitely like this listing. I like the whole thing. I just, you know, we're both a little more cautious on variation listings. You got to do a little more research. But I mean, this speaks to every green flag that we could be looking for as far as. Actually, why don't we this is a good example of it. Why don't you go into that a little bit as far as like if there's a seller and you're selling on a listing like this that has a variation. I don't think we've ever really talked about that. Like, how do you decide which variations to purchase? Like, should I be purchasing the 4-pack? I think that is. Should I be purchasing, you know, when I'm making a PO with a company like this, how do I decide that?
Yeah, so all you're going to do is jump down here to the Keep It chart, hit the variations tab, and then go over to ratings. And if you guys haven't seen the fairly recent video that I put out on Keepa, it's an hour-long video that breaks down exactly how to be an expert in reading a Keepa chart. So all this information is packed in there. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to look at the ratings section here. You're going to sort it from highest to lowest. And you're going to see that, you know, the green 6-ounce 4-pack gets about 60%, and the other one gets about 40%. So they're fairly, you know, evenly split. It's not It's not like a huge delta where we're talking 90 and 10.
Yeah,
So they
sometimes
both
it
help,
is.
you know?
Yeah. And just also to like, add on to that, that is a percentage of the ratings. So is a rating always a sale? No, but it's the best gauge that we have and like what we use as our estimate. So just for easy math, let's say it sells, 100 units per month for this entire listing. Well, then we can safely assume, or we can safely estimate that the 4-pack that you're just talking about sells about 60% of those sales, which would be, 60 sales per month. And so that's kind of how we do it. And obviously, there's nothing better than placing an order and actually seeing sales come in, but that's a good estimate.
Yeah. And so when we look at a product and a brand on Amazon, right? Like, there's a couple of things that'll jump out to us. Obviously this product is selling, very well. It's 1,000 plus bought in the past month, but their product listings do not look so good. And we can look at the brand and we can look at some of their other listings too. But just this listing in and of itself, it just really does not look too good. So it doesn't contain real high quality imagery, lifestyle content, or anything like that. Nothing that really pulls the customer in. It doesn't, contain a well optimized title or keywords in the bullet points or anything like that. And down here, if you scroll down to the product description, you should be seeing some A+ content, but there is none. That's why we don't see it. So all these different things are things that we're able to pitch to brands in order to close an account over somebody else who's reaching out to them. So we look at something like this and compare it to, say, a listing like this, and the differences are night and day, because this listing right here has tons and tons of keywords packed into the title. This is actually a really well optimized title. It's got keywords packed into the bullet points, and then it has nice crystal clear imagery, right?
With infographics, lifestyle. Yep.
Yeah.
What is a Tonka bean, though, is my question. It's in the title there. Tonka bean.
Must be something that's specific to the pomade.
It's like the truck.
What's that?
So it's like the truck.
Yeah. And so, right, like this is an example of a brand that, okay, maybe there are 14 sellers on it. Maybe we could reach out to them and maybe we can get an account. Not saying that it's not worth reaching out to them, but at the end of the day, if push comes to shove and they're saying no Amazon, well, how can we provide a strategic advantage to them? And the answer is probably, we can't do much for them because they already have it all. They have actually really, they have premium A+ brand content. That's what this is. That's why it's so robust. And with that, it's like we couldn't top any of that. So it's like, where is our value that we're adding? Where is our strategic advantage? Well, whereas with something like this, if we're met with resistance when we go to open the wholesale account, well, we have in our back pocket, hey, like, you don't want to work with us, but here's what we can help with. Here's what we can offer to your business.
Yeah, we talk about having like coming in with ammunition, right? Like it's an important element of it, because when you're pretty much, I don't want to say definitely, but most of the time met with some sort of resistance, you want to have a counter. And in the cases of brand direct wholesale, a lot of our countering has to do with developing their brand, and developing their brand has to do with all the things that we're talking about here. So if you guys are watching and you're going to try to pitch a brand, take these value adds and write them down, or whatever it is, or study them. So when you actually go into this situation, because this is not for our benefit that we're doing this. It's like we're showing you guys these types of things so that next time you're on the phone with a supplier or an email with a supplier, you can then use these things to then work your way into that situation. It's all case by case, obviously, but I think this is a great listing, like you said, to be able to have that ammunition to pitch them.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of people like to hear a cut and a black and white answer to a lot of stuff. A lot of people that ask, hey, how do I reach out to brands? How do I provide value? And a lot of people are looking for an answer that's black and white, but a lot of times it's not. It's a gray area. And what I mean by that is just a lot of, I would say most of the really good accounts that we're closing, it's not because of what we said, it's because of how we said it, it's because of how we approached it, how we built the relationship, all the intangible things that come with sales and emotional intelligence and understanding somebody else on the other end of the phone. That's why the account is able to be closed. Whereas it's not just like, well, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this for you, so let me sell your products, right? It's like nothing like that. And I think a lot of people's approaches are like that. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle with closing accounts with brands.
Well, that's kind of, I don't know if you did that on purpose with your, the way you had said that, but that is when you said like, we do this and then we do this, right? Like that is actually kind of a strategy that I feel like a lot of new brand direct sellers use, which is that they try to provide everything that they can possibly do up front. And they think that that is going to get them the account. And a lot of times it's like, the best example I can use is like if you're, talking to someone and it's your first date and you're talking about how you want to get married, right? Like you're probably going to scare them off.
Back off, buddy.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Exactly. You get that kind of like, this pause. You give them pause, and I think that that is essentially what happens with some of these brands is because they're unfamiliar with the Amazon process. They're unfamiliar with this whole concept of a seller trying to help them, which is crazy, but it's true. And so if you don't take things slow and provide, my go-to is literally the images. I'm like, hey, this could be better. This will increase conversion. Let's talk about it. Let's work on it with one listing. Let's do one, and then we go from there. But if you go up to a brand and you're like, you have no A plus content and your bullets are unoptimized and your title sucks and your images are terrible and there's no brand store and it redirects to your, like, you get this like, what are you talking about response?
I think a lot of the pitch to brands, it's the first thing you got to do is find out what their issues are and what they care about.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think a lot of people are missing is they're leaving out the part where they ask the calibrated questions to help uncover what their pain points are, because it's all sales at the end of the day. Like, this is just a different form of sales. So it's like,
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the other day, you're going to laugh, but we were talking about one of our exclusives and I forget who said it. We were like, yeah, like we don't even talk to the guy. like like there's no like we give him the PO and that's it. And that's all he wants, And so like that's an extreme example because obviously it's important to develop relationships, but sometimes you talk about value and understanding what is valuable to that brand owner. Well, sometimes it's just nothing more than that. And sometimes it's the complete opposite. They want detailed reports every month, right? So you just have to understand what value is. And like you said, it's sales. I mean,
right it's how you say it, because a lot of this is compounding, like we weren't as good as at outreach as we are now in the beginning, and that confidence and the experience of doing it and getting the results for brands is what gives you more confidence and more command on the phone. And I said this to somebody the other day, which is that, if you can really command that conversation, they're like, whoa, like, who is this guy? Like, they don't, because they're so used to hearing the same thing over and over again. It's like, we want to sell your products on Amazon, or I want to buy, I have $100 million businesses and I want to place, a $10,000 order right off the, like, it's not understanding that brands are not always motivated by money. That's, Whereas somebody else comes in and goes, starts breaking things down, either maybe on a granular level or takes an approach that they have never seen before.
Yeah, it's confidence as well.
Yeah.
It's and like the whole reason, like for a new seller, right? If you're listening to this, or you're newer to brand direct, or even if you're experienced, right, is there's a model and a template that if you listen to enough brand direct content, you're like, okay, images, listings, optimization, ads, like whatever it is, right? But the reason that I brought up that example about our exclusive, where there's pretty much nothing other than ordering the product, it's because it's not a one size fits all model. Like, you have situations where if you are trying to pitch money and your brand doesn't care about anything but their brand equity and their representation on Amazon, you're going to get nowhere. If the brand doesn't care about anything but ads and you're trying to pitch, content, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, it just, and it goes on and on and on. Like, you have to, we talk about relationships, brand direct wholesale. It's all about relationships, and you have to appropriately develop the relationship with the thing that the brand thinks is valuable, not what we think is valuable. Because if we do that, you have the ladder and it's just going up the wrong wall. So.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of the value adds, like images or ads or whatever, all stem from overarching concepts. And the overarching concepts is what you have to pitch as the value add to the brand, rather than the way it's going to get executed. So like, overarching concept for advertising would be brand real estate, digital real estate for the brand. It's an end cap in the Walmart. It's an ad in the newspaper. Why is it important when a customer searches for something related to your product that you come up? Well, for the same reason that you bought, the end cap at Walmart, or for the same reason that you put the ad in the newspaper, if it was 50 years ago, right? Like, it's helping them understand that it's the overarching concept that's important, and ads and content, all that's just a vehicle to accomplish what you're trying to do and what I'm trying to do, which is grow sales and grow the presence of the brand. Or maybe not grow it, but make it more cohesive, bring more value into
If
the
you
equation.
guys if you guys are listening to this on YouTube or playing it, listening to it back, just go and rewind that and listen to what Brad said again, because that was perfectly put. Like, it's a means to an end. And so getting them to understand the conceptual aspect of it is the first step to getting them into an exclusive or selective agreement. Because if you're executing on things like creating better listings for them without them understanding the conceptual aspect of why you're doing it, you are you're running on a treadmill. You are hauling ass but not going anywhere, right? Because it doesn't matter, because they don't understand why you're doing things. You're doing them just to do them, and that's a very inefficient way to do things. So I think that was perfectly put.
Yeah. And John's asking, how did you guys come across your most profitable exclusives? And it's just sourcing. What we're doing here today, what we've been doing for years is, it's like, these things don't happen overnight. They're built over months and years. And, sourcing is just a component of it, and outreach is a component of it, and building the relationship with the brand is a component of it. So like, our exclusives, our best exclusives take time, as all should. Nobody's jumping into bed on the first date. We got to build the relationship up first, over months and sometimes years. And then at that point, when the brand is ready to move forward, you need to be there with your solutions.
They all, like, this should give you confidence if you're, again, a new seller, is your most profitable exclusive and your worst account that phone call starts the same exact way. The account you never get and your most profitable account ever, the first phone call is exactly the same. The sourcing process is exactly the same. It's the steps between that first initial contact and playing off the emotional intelligence and understanding, and like Brad said, being there, that change that from an account that you're going to lose into a profitable, exclusive, multi six-figure profit account. But every single call is, calling a stock and ship your product, looking to open a wholesale account.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to touch on one more thing before we start closing out here shortly. And if you guys do have any questions, drop them in now before we wrap up. But, just sort of to come full circle on this whole live session, which is that, in the beginning, for those that were not on, we started talking about, some of the issues that are coming out on Amazon with branded bundles. So, creating artificial exclusivity over a product that you really don't have the exclusive rights over. Amazon is coming down hard on a lot of that. And, just pulling it all together full circle, like I talk about the term glorified arbitrage. And essentially what that means is it's the same thing as retail arbitrage. It's the same thing as online arbitrage. And you think you're doing wholesale, but you're really doing glorified arbitrage. And why is that? It's because you're not sourcing the products legitimately. You're not playing by the rules. You're not able to replenish them consistently. And a lot of that stems from, are you buying directly from the brand, or are you buying from an authorized distributor? And if you are buying from an authorized distributor, are you authorized to sell the brand's products on Amazon? Because buying from an authorized distributor and being authorized to sell the brand's products on Amazon are two completely different things. And if you don't have the latter, you are running a risk of an IP claim, right? So going from arbitrage to wholesale is not saving you putting any safety on your account if you're still not authorized to sell the brand's products on Amazon.
People did not like that tweet that you put out saying that everyone was doing glorified arbitrage.
Some people did.
I thought I had written it at first because it was, scheduled tweets. I was like, wow. I was like, and then you're like, oh, I wrote that earlier today.
Yeah.
So we actually question here on Instagram, just to not question, kind of statement, but just to kind of close this out with. And it says, it's hard for them to understand how a price list for a brand can't be profitable on Amazon. And I think that, on the surface, maybe, right? But I think the more you get into this and understand that there is almost like a domino effect on Amazon, where if the brand is always on the brink of destruction, right? Unless they do the things to prevent issues, unless you're being preventative and you're doing things to preserve your brand and protect your brand on Amazon, inevitably, due to arbitrage sellers, due to sellers that are buying products from distributors, whatever it is, the brand equity is going to get diminished, right? And so through price, through bad representation, whatever it might be. But you got to also remember that Amazon is a price-driven, consumer-driven website. And so how do you get the buy box? The buy box accounts for almost all sales on a listing. You lower your price. And so there's always going to be a race to the bottom. And that is why we pitch exclusivity, because it allows us to basically control that price point and, preserve that buy box at a price that's applicable and appropriate for the brand's products. So it's actually not a surprise that most brands are unprofitable. I think the more you do this, the more you understand how to then make a brand profitable. But yeah, that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's definitely. And also the price is not always the price. If you're buying from distributors, you could, build a relationship, negotiate the pricing with the distributors, for sure. So we're closing out here, but if you guys do, tune in, we're live every single Wednesday. We love answering your questions. Wholesale Wednesday, we call it. We called it that for years. God only knows why, but that's a conversation for another day. If you guys are watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like button. Really helps out the channel, helps out the content, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.